Hi, I'm Samantha Ahern, and this is my application for this year's SSI Fellowship. So, who am I? And that's actually a really good question. Some of you will know me in my role as kind of an educator, and I've been kind of kicking around this space for quite a while, but that doesn't really tell you a lot about who I am. So, who am I? Well, you'll notice that on some of these, I'm not having a particularly good day. In others, I'm having an awesome one. And actually, the picture of the Ponticliffe Aqueduct is actually after I just had a really awful day on the Dee. Never paddled the Dee before. It was quite high, it was stonking through, and I'd come out my boat a number of times. But even when I come out and I get a bit of a thrashing of the waves, I get back in and I carry on. And I think that's the point. That it's not always going to be a good day. And that's okay. I'm a resilient little bugger, and I will kind of get back on and get back in. I'm also not averse to a bit of fancy dress and any kind of excuse for a dress up, and not taking myself too seriously. So what do I do? Well, at the moment I co-lead UCL Centre for Advanced Research Computing. I've been in that post for 3 years. During that time I have helped define the scope for the activity there. We've kind of worked out what our kind of immediate plan are and what our learn-on plans are for the kind of the education within ARC. We thought about how we're going to develop people in ARC kind of on that educated pathway and have different steps, and we kind of have kind of buy-in from SLT that this can contribute to their overall profession, so they don't lose out if they're contributing to education. But with that, some of you will know me from my carpentries role, in that I am an instructor trainer. I've been on the Code of Conduct Committee, and I'm on the boards. I'm also involved in SOC RSC. I'm a trustee. I've been thinking about the membership option, kind of wondering why there is a bit of a disconnect between paid up memberships and kind of the people that are in Slack. I don't, why is it that people give so much to the community but aren't full members of the society, and what is it that we're not doing right to work on that? I've been a professional educator for a very, very long time with a mix of roles, and I kind of think about how we teach as much about what we teach and what that means for our learners. Okay, so why the SSI Fellowship? So over the last few years, I've noticed there's been a lot of funding going into training and development and research technical professions and career pathways, and there's been funding from multiple pots for different things. And I spent an awful lot of time talking to lots of different people about the community, and it became very apparent that there were a lot of projects being funded, and some of them had overlapping aims and goals. But because they were coming from different pots of money, that people didn't necessarily know each other, and they didn't realise that these things kind of intersected. And it also kind of isn't obvious what happens to these projects and what the outcomes are. And I just kind of went, well, this needs kind of a bit of coordination or a bit of thinking through, because I'm spotting some reinventing of the wheel, and that just seems a bit of a waste. So what is it that I want to do? In particular, I actually want to kind of get a handle on what all these different projects are, where they are, where they've been funded, what their aims were, and what the outcomes were, and kind of understand, are there things that already exist that we're doing? At the moment, I'm aware of 3 projects that are mapping training at the same time that maybe aren't doing it all together in one way, and that just seems a bit of a waste. Why isn't it a combined effort? So I want to identify all these different projects. I know there are so many and they come from different pots of funding. I want to map them in terms of what their aims were, what the outputs were, identify what the outputs were, and make sure they're shared. And then how do they relate to each other, and do this networking, this cross collaboration piece? Because it's brilliant that there's a lot of funding here, but we're also missing a massive opportunity if we're not doing this in a joined up and combined way. We believe in openness and we believe in team science, and yet oddly that doesn't seem to be what is happening here. So my aim would be to kind of let's actually do this together. Let's identify what's there. Let's work out what can feed into things, and let's kind of get people together through a series of events, a bit of awareness raising, and let's make a difference together.